Story: The Whispering Forest. In 2019, my friend Daniel and I went camping deep in the woods of West Virginia. We wanted to get away from the city, away from people, just us, a tent, and the quiet of nature. But we didn't find quiet. We found something else, something that whispered our names. The first night, the voice in the trees. We set up camp near a small creek. It was peaceful. The kind of place where you feel like the only two people in the world. That night, as we sat by the fire, Daniel suddenly froze. "Did you hear that?" he whispered. I listened. Wind, the crackling fire, then a whisper, faint, far away. I couldn't make out words, but it sounded like a voice. "Must be the wind," I said, trying to shake the feeling. Daniel nodded, but he didn't look convinced. The second night, it knows our names. At 2:37 a.m., I woke up. Something was moving outside the tent. Soft footsteps. Then a whisper right outside. "Daniel." My stomach clenched. It sounded just like me, like someone was mimicking my voice. I turned to wake Daniel, but he was already awake, and his face was pale. "I heard it too," he mouthed. Then, "Jacob." This time the voice sounded like Daniel, right outside our tent, calling my name. The shadows in the trees. We grabbed our flashlights and unzipped the tent, shining the lights into the forest. Nothing, just trees and shadows. Then Daniel gasped. "Look!" Far out between the trees, something moved. Not walking, not running, just gliding. Its shape was wrong, too tall, too thin, and when the flashlight hit it, it melted into the darkness. The last night, the imitation. We should have left, but we were too stubborn. That was a mistake. At 3:12 a.m., I woke up to the tent shaking. "Jacob!" The voice was right outside. "Jacob, come outside." It sounded like Daniel, but Daniel was asleep next to me. I nudged him awake, whispering, "It's back." His eyes widened. And then, from the other side of the tent, "Daniel, come look." It was my voice, perfectly copied, but wrong, like someone wearing my voice as a mask. We grabbed our knives, ready to fight if we had to. Then we heard footsteps, running, circling our tent, fast, faster than any human. The whispers turned to laughter, low, crackling, then silence. We didn't sleep. As soon as the sun rose, we packed up and left. We never went back, but sometimes at night I hear it, from the woods behind my house, a whisper. "Jacob, let me in." Story: The Woman in the Hotel Mirror. In 2021, I traveled to New Orleans for a work conference. I booked a cheap hotel room in the French Quarter. Nothing fancy, just a place to sleep. But I didn't sleep, because at night, when I looked into the bathroom mirror, I saw her, and she was watching me. The first night, the shadow in the mirror. I checked in late, exhausted from the flight. The hotel was old. Creaky floors, dim lights, the smell of dust and something damp. I brushed my teeth looking at myself in the bathroom mirror. That's when I noticed it. A shadow. Not behind me, inside the mirror. I turned around. Nothing. When I looked back, it was gone. I told myself it was my imagination, just travel fatigue. I was wrong. The second night, the reflection that stayed. The next night, I was brushing my teeth again, and I saw her, a woman standing in the mirror, long black hair, pale skin, empty eyes. She was wearing a white dress, stained with something dark. I spun around, but the bathroom was empty. I looked back at the mirror. She was still there, staring. Then she smiled, and the lights flickered. I ran out of the bathroom, slamming the door shut. But from the other side, I heard it, soft laughter. The whisper at 3:33, and I barely slept. At 3:33 a.m., I woke up to a sound. Drip, drip, drip. The bathroom sink. I knew I had turned it off. The door was still shut. Then, a whisper. Come look at me. My whole body went cold. I didn't move, didn't breathe. Then, bang! Something hit the bathroom door. Once, twice, 3 times. Then silence. I stayed under the covers until morning. The room that didn't exist. At sunrise, I packed my bags and went to the front desk. I told the receptionist everything. The woman, the mirror, the knocking. She frowned. Sir, what room were you in? Room 308, I said. She went pale. That's not possible. She turned her screen toward me. Room 308 had been closed for renovations for 6 months. Nobody was supposed to be in there. I left without another word. But when I got home, I checked my phone, and my stomach dropped. There was a photo in my camera roll, a selfie of me, asleep, and in the mirror behind me, she was there, smiling. Story, the door that shouldn't open. In 2018, I moved into a small apartment in Chicago. It wasn't fancy, but it had one thing I liked, a storage closet, or at least that's what I thought it was, until the door started opening on its own. The first night, the door moves. I was unpacking late, exhausted when I noticed it. The closet door was open just an inch. I swore I had closed it. I shrugged, pushed it shut, and went to bed. At 3:14 a.m., I woke up. The door was open again, wider this time. The air felt wrong, thick, heavy, like something was in there, watching me, the scratching in the walls. Over the next few nights, the door kept opening, even when I locked it. Then one night, as I lay in bed, I heard it, a sound from inside the closet, scratching, slow, deliberate, like fingernails against wood. I turned on my phone's flashlight and aimed it at the door. The scratching stopped, but something moved, a soft shuffle, like something was stepping back. I didn't open it. I just pulled the covers over my head and pretended I hadn't heard it. The shadow behind the door. One night I had enough. I grabbed a chair and wedged it under the doorknob. That night I slept better. Until 3:14 a.m. I woke up, cold, uneasy, and then I heard it. Bang, from inside the closet. Bang, bang, bang. The chair shook. The door rattled. Then, silence. I barely breathed. And then, a whisper, right against the door. Let me out. I ran. The hidden door. The next morning, I called my landlord. He came over, annoyed, and yanked the closet door open. Nothing inside, just an empty storage space. I felt stupid until I looked closer. The back wall of the closet looked wrong. I knocked on it. Hollow. The landlord sighed and grabbed a crowbar. One pull, and the entire wall collapsed. Behind it, another door. A second hidden door, with no handle, no knob, just scratches. deep, desperate scratch marks, like something had tried to claw its way out. The landlord turned pale. I, I didn't know this was here. We left it alone. I moved out that week, but sometimes at 3:14 a.m., I wake up and I hear it, that voice. Let me out. Story. The man in the vents in 2020, I moved into a cheap studio apartment in downtown Los Angeles. It was small, a little run down, but I didn't mind. At first, until I heard something in the vents and realized I wasn't alone. The first night, the breathing. The first night I was lying in bed when I heard it. Soft breathing, coming from inside the vent. At first I thought it was the AC kicking on, but then it stopped, and then it exhaled. Long, slow, deliberate, like someone was watching me. I turned over and stared at the vent. Nothing, but I barely slept. The whisper at 2:22 a.m. The next night I stayed up late watching TV. At 2:22 a.m. I heard it again, but this time it spoke, a whisper right above me. I see you. I froze. The voice was inside the vent. I turned off the TV. Silence. I grabbed a flashlight, my heart pounding, and aimed it at the vent. Something moved, a shadow, deep inside, then scraping, like fingernails against metal. I didn't sleep that night. The face behind the grate. The next day I told my landlord. He laughed. These old buildings make weird noises, he said. That night I sat in bed staring at the vent, waiting. At 3:10 a.m. it happened. The grate rattled, slow, gentle, like someone was pushing from the inside. And then a face, peering through the slats, wide, unblinking eyes, watching me. I couldn't move. Then the grate shifted, like it was about to come loose. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight, and just like that, it was gone. The hidden passage. The next morning I called the cops. They arrived and checked the vent. One officer pulled the grate off and froze. Then slowly, he aimed his flashlight inside. What he found still haunts me. A crawl space. Narrow, dark, running through the entire building. Someone had been living there. They found a sleeping bag, empty food wrappers, a pile of clothes, and a notebook filled with my name, over and over. I moved out that day, but sometimes when I wake up in the middle of the night, I swear I hear it. Soft, slow, breathing. Story. The Thing in the Cemetery. In 2017, my cousin and I took a road trip through rural Texas. One night we got lost on an old back road, and our GPS led us to a cemetery in the middle of nowhere. We should have turned around, but instead we got out, and something followed us home. The Forgotten Graveyard. The cemetery was ancient, rusted gates, broken headstones, weeds growing between the graves. There was no church, no sign, just rows of graves under the moonlight. Let's take a look, my cousin Jake said. I didn't want to. Something felt wrong, like we weren't alone. But Jake was already walking toward the graves, so I followed. We walked between the headstones, reading names long forgotten. Then, a whisper. Soft, right behind us. Help me. We spun around. Nobody there. Then, a crunch, like a footstep on dry leaves. Let's go, I whispered. Jake nodded. We turned back toward the car. That's when we saw it, the shadow by the gate. Something stood by the cemetery entrance, tall, thin. Wrong. Its body was too long, too stretched, and its eyes glowing. It didn't move, just watched. Then it tilted its head and took a step toward us. We ran. I didn't look back. I heard footsteps behind us. Fast, heavy. The car was just ahead. We jumped inside, slammed the doors, and locked them. I grabbed the keys, hands shaking, and turned the ignition. The headlights flicked on, and for half a second, we saw it clearly, standing inches from the car. A grin, too wide, too many teeth. And then it vanished, like it had never been there. The reflection in the window. We sped out of there, hearts racing. Miles passed before we spoke. "Did you see?" Jake started. "Yes," I said. Neither of us said anything else. We got to a motel, locked the doors, and tried to sleep. But at 3:03 a.m., I woke up. Something felt off. The room was dark, silent. Then tap, tap, tap. I turned toward the window, and there, in the reflection, I saw it, standing behind me, smiling.